I'm Carrie Goddard. I'm from Beacon Community Impact, and we're talking now about how to have a great week. The idea of how do you get to the end of the week and say, wow, I had a great week. Because wouldn't we all like to be able to say that, you know, that there's plenty going on right now. We'd like to be able to say that. So, all right. Still arranging myself here. That. Okay, a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. You can actually, we're a fairly small group here. You can raise your little electronic hand, or you can just unmute yourself and speak up. I'm happy to make this interactive, or you can drop a question in the chat, whatever you'd like. I think I can keep tabs on everything that's going on here. So there will be the link to the feedback survey is already in the chat, and there will be a recording of this presentation posted. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to contact me. My contact info is also already in the chat. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Okay, I was looking to see if I had anybody else hanging out in the waiting room. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get going. So like I said, what do you want to, we want to all get to the end of the week, or I think we would like to get to the end of the week with being able to say we had a great week. So I'm going to kind of introduce myself, background, where this all comes from. I am an occupational therapist by background. I also have quite a background in process improvement, continuous improvement, and I've done both of those at Beacon Health System for quite a while. I'm relatively new to Beacon Community Impact, and I'm here looking at, through a health equity lens, looking at self-healing communities, building health equity through the self-healing community, increasing our participation in ACE interface presentations, and looking at trauma-informed care. And some of this kind of fits in with some of that. So this idea is that we all have the same number of hours in a week, 168 hours in our week. And wouldn't it be nice if we can look back over the course of a week and say, wow, I had a great week. So before the pandemic, now that we're again in the middle of the pandemic, we thought it was over for a minute there. It's not. We have the holidays, we have the new year starting. This is all just a time to say, how do I look and see what I can do for myself, for others, so that we can influence and even potentially control some of the things that we put in to having a good week. So here's one of the things that I want to first try. We're going to give you a poll, and I set a couple of polls up, and so we're going to give you a poll. So I just launched it. So can you see our poll here? What makes you look back on your week and say, I had a good week? So you can go ahead and type in an answer. All of our responses are going to be anonymous. So I'll just give you a few minutes. Can somebody give me a heads up, thumbs up or something that you've seen it? Yep, you are. Somebody just answered. Excellent. I got 3 answers so far. This isn't like a text, you know, when you see those little 3 dots that somebody's texting you back. I can't see if some people are still texting. But 5 responses now. That's almost half of you. All right. All right. Anybody type in a little bit more? I'm trying to watch people. I don't see, not everybody's got their camera on, so I can't really tell. We're at 6. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And let's share the results. Let's see what happens here. Few details. This is part of my, oh, excellent. Here, we're going to come over here. This is part of my My experiment, can we see that these are the results to the poll? What makes you look back on your week? I knocked out projects, laughed with staff, and lightened my burden. It was productive. I accomplished something. An empty inbox, accomplishments. It's productive. If it's productive and helping others, and I can get through my to-do list at work, get exercise in, and have time to relax on the weekend. All right, some common themes here. All right, some common themes. And you'll see, I'm going to get into some of these today, some of these ideas today, and maybe a few others, just to help you bring in a little more perspective. But that's nice to see. That's kind of where we're starting from. All right. Close that. All right. So let's move on. Okay, so when you look at having a good day or a good week, there's first what you want to set yourself up for, what you want to do in every task, and what you do throughout the day. I'm drawing this framework and some of the information on this from a book called How to Have a Good Day. Somebody actually wrote a book called that by Caroline Webb. This is what it looks like. I thought, wow, that sounds like a neat little idea. Let's take a look at this. Little not being the operative word. That's a dense book. It's a nice book, but she sets up this framework of what can you do first, what can you think about in every task, and what can you do throughout the day to really reinforce what you're doing. It also integrates well with the work that I've been doing with ACE interface presentations, trauma-informed care, and the self-healing communities. And it follows some of it helps to follow and reinforce some of the 6 principles that we see within trauma-informed care, things like safety, trustworthiness, transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice, and choice. So those are the types of things that we'll also be reinforcing a little bit. I won't be talking much about trauma-informed care here, though you will hear a little bit about it at the end of the presentation. So something else to keep in mind is that none of these tricks is a standalone magic bullet. You know, there's tips, tricks, techniques. It would be nice if we had one thing, just do this, everything will be rosy. We realize it's not true. But the upside of that is that they are all independent and they can be done and they can be layered. And don't feel badly if you haven't started them, a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Start at any time. Start it today. Start it right now. Cut yourself some slack. Have a little self-compassion. If you start and then you stop, come on back to it. The point is they will layer and they do add up. So that's all a good thing. So one of the first things we want to start looking at are priorities. Now, this is, we're about to start a new year, and many of you have taken the time to look back and say, what are your strategic priorities? What are your goals? Now, as we go through this talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about some work things, some personal things, because we're all people who are showing up to work, right? So we kind of layer them both back and forth. But I won't go. It's going to be a fairly superficial talk, so I won't go deeply into depth about how do you do your strategic planning. We could do that another time if you'd like to do that. But we will get into. I'll touch on some things. Feel free if you'd like to. Let me know if you'd like more information about something. And okay. So when we look at priorities, you can set your priorities, setting your strategic goals and your priorities. What you want to do is every week, every day, whatever it is, limit your to-do list to those things that are going to set you on a path to achieve your most significant priorities. And so but looking at it as what is achievable. Put 50 things on your to-do list. Maybe it's not going to set yourself up for success. You want to set yourself up for success. Now, a lot of this is probably stuff that you already know. So I'm not going to reinforce a lot of this. But a couple of things that you can keep in mind is some of the neuroscience behind this. When you have a to-do list and you check things off, which some of you have already recognized, you get a little reward. You get the part of your brain, the reward center in your brain, you get a little shot of dopamine that says, hey, I got it. That's also part of the idea of gamification, gamifying things. And as we play, for any of you who are video game aficionados, which I'm not, you play a video game, you level up, you get a score, you get points, you get this little this little hit of dopamine, and it feels good. And that's what's reinforcing. So you can do the same kind of thing. You set something and say, this is important to me. This is aligned with my values. This is one of my strategic priorities. And I got this task done that leads me one step closer to that. Ding, you get this little reinforcement. It's nice. So something else that you can look at is setting intentions positively. So I'm going to break this down a little bit. So we can say things like, I hope I'm going to have a good day, or I hope I run into people that I enjoy being with. Or you can say, I think it's going to be a good day, which those sound great. They're positive, right? But the saying, I hope or I think, introduces that little bit of doubt. So our brains will take that and start to go, maybe there's some doubt. Maybe there's a little threat there. So take that extra step and say, I'm going to have a good day. I sleep well. And that just gives you that intention of saying, I sleep well. And I'm going to say this, some of you know this, I've been struggling with sleeping well. And to say, gosh, I really hope I have a good night's sleep tonight. Again, it introduces that little bit of doubt. So just say, I sleep well and I wake refreshed. And layer by layer, little by little, it just might help. It sets your brain up. It sets a particular portion of your brain up for expecting that positive, expecting that result. It's kind of like, I don't know if any of you have kids. I guess adults can do this too. But kids play yellow car, you're it. You're driving around town with your kids and they see a yellow car and they probably whack you when they see it. But you start to do that and you're seeing yellow cars all over the place, right? Now you're gonna drive home tonight and see yellow cars, right? There aren't that many of them out there. But until you have that positive mindset of seeing something or experiencing something, you're a little bit less likely to have it happen. So again, this is say it very positively, set an intention very positively and see what happens. You can set it with sleep, healthy eating, interacting with friendly people, having a good day, whatever it might be. Another option is to look at something like reinforcing, setting out your expected behavior, but setting out a plan B as well. Because if you only set out plan A and plan A doesn't pan out for whatever reason, you're left hanging. Your brain is left like in threat mode. Plan A didn't work. Now what do I do? So you want to have yourself plan B in your back pocket. And some of this comes from classic healthy eating examples. So something like, I'm going to eat a salad for lunch. You didn't have time to pack that healthy salad for whatever reason. So plan B is I'm going to order a healthy salad out, not just, okay, for those of you who know where our office is, Burger King's next door. I could just run to Burger King, right? I'm not going to run to Burger King. I'm going to order a healthy salad instead. And so you already have plan B. It helps to minimize that threat to your brain from a neurological perspective. So here's what I'm going to do. This is another one of my Zoom experiments. We're going to set some breakout rooms. I'm going to put you all into automatic breakout rooms. I'm going to just randomly assign you. We're going to see how many people you have. So your goal is to do some brief introductions, just kind of who you are, where you work, something like that. And then what is one intention you can set? Just something, a positive intention, and how are you going to state it positively? So let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Breakout, oops, moved my mouse too quickly. Breakout rooms, sign automatically, and we're going to put 2 to 3 people in each room. So you're just going to have a couple of people to get your to be able to interact with. And I'm going to set you, I think, for about 4 or 5 minutes. Okay. It hasn't figured out how to do this. Options. Breakout rooms will close automatically after, I'll give you 4 minutes. Notify me when time is up. You'll get a countdown timer for 60 seconds. Okay, here we go. Are you popping into your rooms? Looks like you are. Oh, hey, Donna, I can see you're back.
I used to have a little picture of myself that would go on, and I'm not sure why that's not doing it anymore, but I'll have to look into that.
So I figured it out. So if I log into Zoom first before I get on to whatever Zoom presentation,
That's right. That's right.
then my picture shows up.
That's right. I have to remember that for next time. I have a nice picture.
No, it's really funny. You know, there are so many Zoom tricks, right?
Yeah.
You do a whole class on all that. Okay. Are people back? Hi, everybody. All right. I'll close my little breakout. All right. People are smiling. That's good. The other trick I learned is that once you get the 60-second warning, when people all like flood back in, they're like, okay, they weren't quite as engaged, but you all took your time. So that's nice. And it looks like some of you, a few of you turned on your cameras. So that's great. So who wants to just give me a little heads up about what were some of the intentions? Just so I have some examples.
Mine was I will be active in the morning, and by that I mean a couple of years ago I got into a really good habit of like picking a couple of really simple exercises, like doing a plank for 30 seconds and then maybe doing some squats and alternating them back and forth, and just kind of do that in the first 5 to 10 minutes of my morning as I was getting ready. And it was just a really great way to start the day, and I just have fallen out of the habit. So my intention is I will start doing those exercises in the morning.
Excellent. Excellent. Anyone else want to share? All right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry. Just put in the chat. I have to leave to go to WIC for the other half of my workday. But I had mine with HR, and I was telling him that I used to be good at it, but I got to get back to it. Basically, trying to wake up like 10 minutes before the actual set time, rather than hit snooze. Waking up 10 minutes before and moving some type of way, which isn't laying down and meditating, as far as already trying to create and figure out how your day should look like or what you should expect that day.
Yeah, that's great, Danny. Yeah, we'll miss you. Have a good time at WIC. You bring up a really good point about just giving yourself that little buffer. And we'll talk about that occasionally as we come in, like how do you build a buffer around things? Time is a little bit of it. Sometimes it's tempting just to go from one thing to the next. We want to have that little bit of buffer. Sometimes it's in time, sometimes it's in just taking something off of your to-do list to say, you know, that little thing isn't that important. Having a few minutes of unstructured time is good, and planning the time to set your intentions. So great. Okay, let's keep moving here. So the next thing we want to look at is productivity. A number of you said at the beginning, what are some of the ways that what are some of the things that you say when you look back and say, oh, I checked things off my list. I accomplished some things. So what are some of the ways to increase your productivity? Now, again, this is going to be fairly high level. We could do a whole like 3-day workshop on productivity, right? So I'm not going to get into the details here, but just a couple of things, and some of them looking at the neuroscience behind things, and some ways that are just easy tips and tricks to do things. One of the things to keep in mind is multitasking is not actually possible for our brains. As much as teenagers think it is, and they're on their phones and they're doing many things, what they are actually doing is switching tasks very quickly. But switching tasks is very, very demanding on our brains. And it decreases our effectiveness, and it's much more productive and effective for us to do work in what's called a state of deep work, where you are just committed to doing one thing at a time without lots of distractions. So turn off all those notifications, turn off your email notifications, and set yourself that time aside just to do something. So as I was pulling this presentation together, I said, this is what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything else. Now, that said, take breaks. So you don't need to work on something for 3 hours straight. We can really handle working on something for about 25 to 45 minutes at a time, and then we need a break, even if we don't feel like we need one. And that's a really important point, is take a proactive step to give yourself a break. Then you can come back to your deep work and keep working, and you'll be more productive in that second work session or the third work session than if you just kind of plow all the way through and then suddenly feel like you're fatigued. Where's the coffee? Where's a candy bar? Right? You don't want to get into that situation if you can avoid it. Another really important thing to consider is automating something, and automating the small and inconsequential stuff. I say inconsequential, it's just still stuff you have to do, but maybe stuff that you don't want to take your really limited brain power to putting into the creativity of what you need to do every day. And a really classic example on that is what you wear. And I'm going to present two sides to this, but most of you have probably heard Steve Jobs, Barack Obama, they wore essentially a uniform. It doesn't look like a sports uniform or a military uniform, but Steve Jobs in his jeans and his black turtlenecks, right? Barack Obama, read somewhere, all he had were gray and blue suits. So it was, on any given day, do I wear a gray suit or a blue suit? And the American flag pin. So he just didn't have to think about what he wore every day. So we've all had that time where we're standing in the closet going, oh my goodness, what am I going to wear today? Right. And it's just draining. First thing in the morning, kind of picture this. Wouldn't it be nice to be doing some planks and spending a little time, meditating, setting your intentions, instead of standing there going, oh, where's my green shirt? Is it clean? Like, I want to wear that today. So that's the kind of thing you can automate things. Now, I will say the automating dressing, I've seen other people say, I just wear black and white. I've got a bunch of white tops. I've got a bunch of black pants. I just grab them. They're all mix and match. We don't put any effort into that. On the completely other side of things, I will say, I worked with somebody who had a fabulous wardrobe. And I just like, wow, what a wardrobe. And I asked her about it someday. She said, I don't do much in the way of creativity. This is my way of creatively expressing myself. And so she put a lot of effort into building her wardrobe and accessories and all that kind of stuff. But she also automated it in that Sunday night, she made sure everything, she planned out what she was going to wear 5 days of the week. She had it all set aside. It was all clean. It was all ready to go. So when Wednesday came around, she just put that on. So it was a combination of the two, and I thought that was really interesting. And so what it does is, what it looks at what your brain wants to take the easy way out. And so you use the littlest brain power to take something that you've automated. Okay, so we're going to do another poll. This one is, if I can figure this one out, poll ended. Uh-oh. No. Okay, so this is what I was saying about the being stuck. My poll number 1 has ended, and I don't see how I can get to poll number 2. I set up 4 polls. I'll go to plan B in a second. All right, I'm going to plan B. So what is one thing that you can automate? So think about that. What can you automate? You might already have something automated. Just let us know. You might know of somebody else who's automated something. What can you automate? Large, small?
So I have an idea. This is Donna. I'll put my video back on. So on the days that I working in the office on Sunday, I actually make my oatmeal for the week. And I add things to it. It's like I add sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds and flax seeds, a lot of other those little things. So I grind all that into 5 little containers on Sunday. So
wow.
So come in the morning, I just boil water, heat that one portion up, add it, throw it in my thermos, and all I need to really worry about is, okay, what am I doing for lunch? So that's one thing that I automate.
That's great. Yeah. You got a thumbs up from somebody. Anybody else? What else can you automate?
I do that same thing, and on Sundays, and I also make big salads for every day of the week. So it just takes that whole decision for breakfast and lunch off the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Somebody else?
Can you guys hear me?
We can. I hope you're parked.
I am. I actually pulled over to the side of the road. I automate so many of the things we've already discussed, like food, clothes. I kind of just do my whole day throughout on Sunday. So like, okay, these days I'm going to do this activity. Every morning I'm going to do gratitude at this time. And I think just, I'm almost automating the day in advance because I know, I think one of the things I've always struggled with, I felt like the many things I committed to in my life were all priorities. And so I was struggling with prioritization in general. And so I don't know if I've gotten necessarily better at that, but because I automate more things, I am able to get those in with the buffers. Like I'm intentional and present when I'm doing them. So yeah, food, clothes, working out, gratitude. I'll pre-plug it for sure.
That's great. You're a great example, a great model to us. That's great.
The one thing that I've automated and I'm so happy that I have in my life is bill paying. And I'm so happy that those things exist because I'm the worst. I was always the person who was like, the day it was due, like 3 days later, I'm like, oh no, I got to send that in now. It's like, but for me, it's a lifesaver because I have a separate checking account that every pay period, I just put a certain amount in there so that I know that I'm never going to be without money for those bills. And I just set them up under that bank account. And I just always make sure that every pay period, I put money in over there so that everything's covered. And it's just something I don't think about anymore. Everything's set and I'm just like, it's one less stressor that I have to think about.
Yeah, that's a great example of automation. Yeah. I've set up my Outlook inbox to sort my email. And so that's been a big time saver because I can ignore a whole lot of it. I've even set some things up to automatically delete. And I just don't even see them. I just don't see there's a reason I can't just block the sender. And it's, don't worry, it's none of you. It's truly things that I can just definitely delete. Got other things like my invites all come into a certain folder. So I pay attention to those rather than just getting sorted in. And I absolutely unsubscribe to all the junk that comes through. And you can't automate the unsubscribing, but once you do, they just don't exist anymore. That's awesome. So, all right, I'm going to keep moving here. Okay, so the next thing that we can look at are building relationships. So we've talked about what can we do to set up our workday at the beginning. We're going to just set up our intentions. We're going to set up our priorities as we move through our workday. How do we build relationships? Because that's a sort of thing that when you look back and you say, yeah, I had a good time with the people I work with. I had a good time with the people I ran into. So looking at that is having common goals, which we all should at work, right? We should all have common goals at some level. At the high level, we might be working on different projects, but we've all got common goals. So those should be very clear. When you're talking to people, you want to build some level of trust, having a level of informality, asking open-ended questions, and finding those personal commonalities. That's the kind of thing. Now, it's been really hard as we've lived for the last, I can't believe it's almost 2 years in the Zoomiverse here. Building that level of trust and establishing rapport and getting to know people has been challenging. And so you have to be a little more intentional about it, because you're not going to just run into, if you're still working at home or, like you, I'm not necessarily running out to in-person meetings with all of you. And so it's just a little harder to have that level of chit chat. So finding commonalities. Something else to look at in terms of your brain is, don't set yourself up, if you can avoid setting yourself up for a threat initially. So just assume the best. Assume that somebody is going to be competent. Assume that they're going to have a sense of being whole, resourceful, and capable. Right? The people we want to meet people that until they kind of prove otherwise, and then we can say, how can we help them if that's a challenge? But assume that they are. And at the same time, try to take their perspective and see if what you're coming at presents any kind of threat. Does it present any kind of threat, a threat to inclusion, to fairness, or respect? Because people want to be part of the in-group, right? Everybody wants to be part of the in-group. You remember the popular kids from high school, right? And at some level, you start to say, well, I really don't want to be part of that group because I've found my own in-group. So we want to find our own in-group. And how do we kind of grow that, even if the in-group is the people who like drink a lot of water at work, right? How do we start to kind of reinforce some of the positive things? And what is the in-group? You want to include people. There's really no downside to it. It's not that you have to have a party for your 300 closest friends every weekend to include people, but just reaching out, hey, I'm good to see you. I'm grateful you're here. And I will say, I am grateful that all of you are here. It helps to increase our sense of inclusion. So that's something we want to look at. The neuroscience behind it, when we start to, this will bring this up a little bit too, of when we have eye contact, when we have common goals, when we kind of focus on each other, we activate what are called mirror neurons. It gives us a little shot of oxytocin, which is again a feel-good neurotransmitter, a feel-good hormone, and we get that little burst if that feels good. So cute little saying, connection is protection, helps you to build resilience. So in the interest of time, I will not do the little exercise I had planned here, which was to break out and find it in a small breakout room, what we have in common. All right, so just go in a little practice. So you can find somebody today that you run into, whether if you're at work with other people around, or somebody you may talk with, what's something you have in common? People at work, funny little things. You both like coffee, y'all like cats, you grew up in, I actually found this out. I live here. I grew up in San Diego. Somebody here in town she and I went to the same high school. Somehow we found that out. Anyway, so think about that for somebody what connection can you make with somebody today? So the next area we're going to look at, we talked about this a little bit already, is thinking. You're at work, you want to come back to, you want to get to the end of the week and say, I had a good week. So you want to look at how you structure your thinking. We already talked about this, doing deep work. Plan that out. Maggie probably plans it out. When is she going to do her sit and think and do deep thinking work? Like I said, 20 to 45 minutes at a time. There is a technique called a Pomodoro technique. Pomodoro is I think it's an Italian word for tomato. Some little kitchen timers look like a little tomato. You can set it for 25 minutes. The idea is you set it for 25 minutes, then you take a 5-minute break. You get up, you get some water, you go to the bathroom, you chit chat, whatever it is, you just take a break. And then you come back, you do another 25 minutes of work. So you might start the day thinking, great, I'll do 8 Pomodoros today. That'll be awesome. Well, turns out to be a little bit ambitious. And so people on a really well-structured day can maybe do 4, maybe 5. Again, so that's a good technique though, to structure yourself some deep work time as well as some breaks. You want to also start to look at what are your signs of fatigue. And some people who have good self-awareness can start to recognize, I'm starting to shift in my seat. I'm getting distracted. I sit by a window, I can watch traffic go by. When I'm noticing the traffic more than I'm noticing my computer screen, it's time to take a break. I get really anxious when I need to go to the bathroom. But sometimes I don't recognize that that's what's going on. So I can stop and I can say, oh, I'm just anxious. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. All right, it's time for a break, right? So you can start to recognize some of these yawning, recognize some of your physical signs of fatigue and go take a break. So something else to look at is you can't think well when you're in a state of heightened arousal or lowered arousal. So if you know what I'm thinking of is when somebody's really keyed up. And they're stressed out. There's just a little too much going on. And so they're probably having a little bit of these stress hormones, cortisol, some others that are starting to hit their system. Harder to think when you're like that because you've activated a part of your brain called the amygdala. You want to calm that down so that you can then activate your prefrontal cortex, which you're going to use to do your thinking. And same idea of if you're under aroused, you can't do your good thinking because you're tired, you're sleepy, you may not, too under aroused, you're not conscious. So that's what you want to start to look at those. So how can you regulate yourself? One is breathing. So this is a really important one. It's one of the easiest things that we can do. Now, in terms of our brain, there are certain things that we do consciously and there's certain things obviously we do unconsciously. Y'all, since I've been talking here, I've not been thinking about, oh, am I breathing? I got to remember to breathe. But we can. This is an interesting one because we can intentionally remember to breathe. And what that does is it activates, particularly deep breathing, activates your vagus nerve. When your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that controls your diaphragm, when your vagus nerve is activated, your amygdala, since it's part of inside your brain, it can't be activated. So the two of them kind of work against each other. So you can intentionally activate your vagus nerve, which then allows your prefrontal cortex, your higher thinking centers to be active. And you just do that by deep breathing. And you can calm your mind down. I think we're going to get to it in another slide here. Calm your mind down, breathe in, breathe out about 5 times. The beauty of this, you can do it anytime you want. So, all right, I'm going to move ahead. Okay. I'm not going to say a ton about this side, looking at influence, how you influence people, yourself, that kind of thing. Keeping it short and simple, providing milestones. I can say I'm on the 6th of 7 slides that I'm going to present about today. Actually, I think I'm on the 5th. And so how what are you going to, you can just provide some context. Another interesting thing is looking at influencing people because, you feel like you've accomplished more, if you've kind of gotten them along on board with you. It's providing the why. We've heard about this. You all want to know why. I saw an interesting interesting study. Somebody wanted to make some copies. They needed to interrupt the person standing at the copy machine. So when somebody just walked up and said, "Hi, can I interrupt you and make my copies?" 60% of the time, the person said yes. When they said, "Can I interrupt you and make my copies? I'm in a rush," it went up to 94%. Now, when they said, can I interrupt you and make my copies because I need to make some copies, which is, kind of a circular language. There's really no justification in that. It went up to 93% just because they gave a reason why. And I'm thinking, well, that's interesting. Now, I don't want you to go out and deceive people, but the point here is that your acceptance of what you're trying to achieve will go up if you give an answer, give a reason why. You also want to think about minimizing threats. Again, our brain doesn't like threats. We want to keep that down because that kicks in the lizard brain, the reactive fear, fight or flight part of your brain. So put yourself in their position. If you're asking somebody to do something, how will that come across to them? Will that build a sense of inclusion and fairness, or could there be a threat to something? Could they perceive it as a threat? If you're not sure, ask them. Ask them an open-ended question. How does this come across to you? What do you think of this? And give them that opportunity to respond. It's an interesting thing. So those are some tips to look at here. As you're looking at the neuroscience behind some of these things, keep in mind working memory, the limits to our brain. It can only retain so much. That's why you keep it short and simple. And our brain likes to take shortcuts. So again, as you're looking at providing milestones, providing the context, it's going to jump right to that. Okay. All right, some basics about resilience. We've already talked a lot about this. But looking at when we've had some of these issues, something happens at work where you're like, what happened? Or it happens at home. What is it? How do you calm yourself down so you can move on past it? Because we've all had those times when something happens, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, wherever, where we just ruminate over it. And it just kind of takes over our day. And you get to the end of the day, you're like, man, I've stewed over that all day long. You can break that cycle. And so one thing is to start off with diaphragmatic breathing. You want to shut down the fight or flight part of your brain and bring in your frontal cortex so you can do a little more thinking. Once you do that, it helps. It helps to be able to write it down. Label what happened. This is the facts. These are what happened. And then ask yourself some rewarding questions. What am I really trying to achieve here? What can I learn from this? Because that activates the sort of curiosity centers of our brains. When I overcame a challenge, I know I overcame a challenge, and you might think for yourself, what's a challenge you overcame? Could be completely different. How can I draw on those skills, on those resources to help me overcome this one? So I'll give you a little example in this. I went kayaking with my son down a river out at Turkey Run down in out near Indianapolis. And we had agreed where we were going to get out, and we're paddling along. It's lovely. It's nice. He's like, Mom, this is where we need to get out. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's it. It's not very well marked. I don't think that's it. He's like, yeah, Mom, it is. So this is happening. And he's like heading to the shore, and I'm still floating downriver. And I'm like, oh. And I'm doing a really quick assessment on, I don't have any water. I don't have any food. I'm 2 hours from the next port. He's going to get out. I'm going to be by myself. I'm like, oh, this is not where I want to be. I need to turn myself around and literally paddle upstream now because I've drifted down. I got to paddle upstream and get out of there. And that's exactly what I did. And he's like, Mom, you can do it. You can do it. And so now when something challenging happens, I can give myself this little pep talk. I got out of that. I can get out of this. And it's just, what can I do? Well, I drew on some of my inner resources. I said positively, I'm going to get to shore. And I found the arm strength and the perseverance to do it. Didn't take very long. It wasn't an, insurmountable obstacle. So that's something that I wanted to bring up on that. All right. My last slide here, my last point, energy. We need to conserve our energy. And some of the little energy builders and ways to conserve energy, start a meeting with discovery mode. Kimberly likes to start our team meeting with, tell me something good. So just discover something, open your mind up to curiosity. Not, it's gonna be another meeting. Turn a transaction into an interaction. And this is something, you can do this when you go into a store. You could just pay for your coffee, or you can say, you know, made a comment about a shirt, a logo somebody had on a shirt, have a good afternoon, just smiling at strangers, or saying, you know, good morning, saying something now that we're all wearing masks. Somebody actually walked by my office earlier today, said, I really just smiled at you. She's got a mask on, so I wouldn't have known it. So, and here's one, and this is part of the reason I'm rushing, end meeting slightly shorter than an hour. If you stick to having 53-minute meetings, 55-minute meetings, it builds in that buffer so that people have that little, it doesn't give them that sense of stress of, I got to get to the next meeting, but I need to go refill my water bottle first, right? So you want to build in that buffer. Personally, gratitude journal. Gratitude, I'm going to give a little example of this. You know, I'm sure you've heard about it, but this is a study that I saw about people where two groups of people asked to write in a gratitude journal versus writing about hassles or just life events. The people who wrote in the gratitude journal had fewer health issues, exercised more, and were more optimistic about the future. And, you know, it's the kind of thing, it's easy, it's free, there's no downside, but there are lots of upsides. And what all this does is strengthen the neural pathway to have a positive perspective on life. So that's what I'm going to say. I was going to do another poll, but I'm not going to, in the interest of time, just say, what are some random acts of kindness that you might have experienced? So think about that for yourself. You can tell somebody else. If you have the opportunity to do a random act of kindness, go for it. That'll help you. All right. So really, just to wrap up, some of the things that we looked at are what can you do before work, setting your intentions, doing that exercise in the morning. What can you do each day to get yourself started? Look at your to-do list. What's really effective? When can you carve out time for that deep work? All day, how do you make connections throughout the day? At lunch, how do you take a break? You know, how do you make sure you're really getting away from things so you can come back refreshed? Each task, again, how do you set your intentions for that? Day's end, I didn't even talk about sleep, but how do you set yourself up for a good night's sleep so that you're set up for a good, successful next day? It all adds up in the end. All right, that's what I had planned to say. Okay, I'm gonna have a couple of other little bits. Any comments, questions, anything else? All right, okay. I am going to put in a plug here for those of you, some of you have already heard this. Beacon Community Impact and Notre Dame are in the middle of a trauma-informed care study. We're looking to recruit participants for cohort number 2. These are our dates that we're looking at. We need 2 to 3 participants from 10 different organizations. So I will pop the link for this Google form into the chat. If you're even remotely interested, go ahead and sign up. We'll start getting, we'll get connected. But that's my plug for that. And now Kimberly wants to say a few words.
Good afternoon. In the spirit of keeping the meetings short and ending early, I just wanted to be able to provide an update on where Beacon Community Impact is currently and where we're headed. And so you may be aware that we have that we've conducted a community health needs assessment, which hopefully you had an opportunity to engage in. And with that said, we've identified our priority areas for the next 3 years, which are mental health and healthcare access. Mental health, really looking at the root cause for mental health rather than simply the disease itself. And then also with healthcare access, really being intentional about what it means to really engage in healthcare literacy, both from a physician or clinician perspective for those delivering services to the individuals in the community who need to be equipped in order to navigate their own health and achieve their optimal health outcome. And so with those priorities, the next step is for us to continue to have conversations with our boards, get those priorities as well as the implementation strategy approved. And once we have that, we are establishing our process for it's requesting for funds, I should say, request for proposals, my apologies, so that we can then issue a granting opportunity to community-based organizations to help us achieve what we've established as our implementation around our priority needs. And so there's going to be a couple different opportunities with our request for funding process, where we're going to be very interested in who can assist us around our strategies created, but then also capacity building, which is much in line with what this opportunity is here. We're providing these workshops, but more importantly, on a capacity building level, what can we do in the sense of providing assistance around monitoring and evaluation, strategic planning, data collection. Maybe you need funding to help with some trainings for your staff or for your program participants. And so whatever capacity building looks like for you, in alignment with our mental health and health care access priorities, we want to be sure to be able to give you an opportunity to let us know what that is. And then certainly we want to see how best we can support you. The timeline for this is that if the stars align, we can maybe get something issued out yet before year end. But certainly the first or second week in January, we will issue the RFP, and it's going to be a quick process. And we're going to look for applications to come in so that hopefully you can be awarded or notified of being awarded and funded no later than February. And so that is what we wanted to offer to you today as we close out tonight's session, or this afternoon session. I should apologize there. It's not night quite, but it's been a long week already. But that being said, I will open up and ask, are there any questions? All right.
Hi, Kimberly. Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So like Imani is currently a partner. Will your current partner, how will you be getting the RFPs out?
Yep, so I plan to send an email out by the end of this week or early next week with an update and what they can anticipate. And then we will host a workshop about the RFP. We'll walk organizations through the RFP process, but more importantly, with the understanding that you understand our strategy moving forward, and then ways that you may, that it may benefit your organization and the clients that you serve. And that's how we hope to get it out. So we do have a listserv already and are currently collecting additional names and email addresses just the same.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you, Kimberly, and thank you, everyone. And we are not quite at the top of the hour, so I almost met my goal of getting out of here by 53 minutes to the hour. So if you could take just a few minutes and open up our survey, I put it into the chat. That helps provide us some feedback, and we really appreciate that. And if there aren't any further questions, I will just ask you to do that, and I will say, I'll let you go and hope you have a great week.